going to take a look at this mesh file and see how we would go about creating a two-sided part for this. In this particular mesh or any mesh job, how you might go about connecting the part and not having the part move out is going to change based upon the type of job it is itself. So first thing we're going to do is come in here and import the STL file, and this is the object we want to do on both sides. Now it kind of imports down here off the plate a little bit, so I'm just going to select it, and I'm going to hit my control key and my number 1 from the number pad to the lower left of the number pad. It has to be the number pad and not the numbers at the top of the keyboard, and that will center it here to the lower left hand corner of the plate. Now before I do anything else, I might kind of just get myself an idea of the size part I want to work on. And so I'm going to come here, and first of all I'm going to group these, because if I don't group them I'm going to create a block around them, but it would put a block around each part. So I want to group it together into a single object. I'm going to go here to the solutions menu and hit the block tool, and let's do 25 by 25 offset here, and that's going to be the general size of the part we're going to have. All right. All right, so we've got our general work area here, and now that I'm done with this tool, I'm just going to close out of here. And now I'm going to select this all and hit Control 1 and move it to the lower left hand corner. Now if I wanted to make this a specific size part, I could come in here and kind of take a look at this. I'm going to hit the F2 key and see that this is about 907 by 916. So if I wanted to make it some other size part, I could. It doesn't have to be this particular size. So let's just come here and make this well, actually, you know what, I am going to keep it right this size uniform part. I mean, I guess I could I would rather have it just be an equal distance from each size than to worry about a particular size piece, because this can easily be cut out and made any size part we want it to be. So I'm, for this example, going to go ahead and keep it this way. So I'm going to now come here and just make my plate the size of my selection. That way the plate will be the same size as my job from now on, making it easy for me to view what's going on. And if I hit the word top up here, double click it, we can see this side of the material. Now I'm going to come back here and make this material size 35 millimeters. And we're going to come here and let's back out of this view a little bit. I can see that this material is all the way at the top here. For the purpose of creating this piece, I'm going to move this now back down so that from the side view, I'm going to highlight front. Then this is going to represent the Z position of the part. I'm going to put in 0 and put the bottom handle here resting right on top of my part. Now to do this overall project, I'm going to make a few different layers to just help myself in terms of navigating around here. And I'm going to have 6 layers total. And we're going to call this side 1, side 1 mesh, and side 1 toolpath. All right, and this one we'll call side 2. Side 2 mesh, and side 2 toolpath. All right, now we're going to hit the OK button here. That just gives us a number of layers to be able to do this project. Now I'm going to take this part, and this particular piece is going to be my primary part. So this is going to be in side 1. It's in the right spot. These files right here, I'm going to move to, and using this little icon right here, I'm going to move this to side 1 mesh, and I don't have the toolpath contours yet. Now I'm going to copy this one, hit Control C to copy it, I'm going to go to side 2 and paste this to the active layer. Just hit right click and paste to active layer. Then we'll go back to these mesh files. I'm going to hit Control A, Control C. We're going to paste these to the active layer. Now, for side 2, the parts have to be mirrored, and I have to decide now how I want to flip my parts, whether I want to flip them on the X or the Y. The way I've decided I want to do this project, and it could be done either way, is to flip it along the Y or the X axis, the flat axis along the table here, so that when I'm flipping it, this edge here will be on the other side. So I'm going to accomplish that by coming here. And actually, before I do that, I'm also going to take a look at these shapes here and just make sure. And actually, this is how I want to do it. I want to cut this side second. So this is going to definitely be my side 2. All right. And so currently, side 1 and side 2 are the same on the same side. So the side 2 needs to be. Oh no. Okay. So this is going to be side 2. Then I actually need to flip side 1 because I'm going to keep that as side 2. So here's my side 1 mesh, and these are the ones we're going to flip. All right, now I'm just going to accomplish this by coming here, and I'm going to hit F2 for the Precision Input Center. There's all kinds of ways you could flip this. How I'm going to do it is I'm going to go to the Rotate tool of Precision Input Center. This axis I'm flipping it on is the X axis, and I'm going to say 180 degrees. Alright, and that did flip it. It just moved it a little bit. So now I'm going to go Precision Input Center again, highlight one of these Z axis views, and then come down here and let's make this go to 0. Okay, so now I have this mesh parts are resting right on top of the plate at a Z position of 0, and that is the case for both of these parts. Now I'm going to come here and let's go to the side 1 mesh, the side 1 layer, and this is going to be where my relief's going to be. Now, it could be possible to just do the relief the size of the parts, but I'm just going to go ahead and make my relief size the whole part of my piece here, and I'm going to do that by going here and making a flat, no thickness relief, and I'm going to make this 100. And we'll hit apply. It's possible I might make it a little higher resolution if need be, but for this first example, we'll just do it this way because it'll be a little faster. All right, now I'm going to close this, and I'm going to come over here to the Layers tool, or hit F7, and I'm going to turn on the mesh in side 1, and that's just going to put these mesh objects here. I'm going to select them both, go to the Surface tool, and what we want to do is apply a mesh. So we're going to apply these mesh objects to the relief. We're going to hit Add, Faceted, Apply. Adding it is just merge highest or add would either work here or replace. There's a number of ones that would give you the same result. Now I'm going to show the render view, and I can see they're kind of occupying the same space at the same time. So what I'm going to do is come here and just turn on all layers, and now turn them off. And then I should be able to just see the current layer. There we go. Now I'm just looking at what I added. I added the mesh from the first side of the part, and the reason why I'm doing this side first is because when I flip it over, this flat spot here is going to be the flat spot of the material. So this is going to be resting on the table, and this is what's going to be keeping connection to the table in the material as we do this. So this flat spot, for this particular job, will be how we accomplish that. We don't need to leave it suspended in air or anything, or keep it connected in the middle. We can actually use this flat spot here as the way to keep it connected to the part. So on this first side, we're not even going to worry about bridging it in any ways, because when we cut it, we're not going to cut all the way through. We can leave it just connected to the material as is. We do have to decide whether we're going to cut this material out now, this square, then we would need to add a toolpath to cut the shape out so that when we flip it, we know it's going to be very exact when we place it back in the table to register it for the second side of the cut. You know, another way to accomplish that is to maybe put some dowel holes in the middle of the part so that when you flip it, you can fit them right back into the same holes, and that helps to square the part as well. So there's a number of ways or techniques to register this piece as it's flipped from one side to the other. Just squaring it and creating some type of a little dowel hole jig or some other method for aligning the part should do a pretty good job of keeping it accurate. But also, you know, creating a 10 millimeter hole in each side at a uniform distance from the edge, say 5 millimeters or 10 millimeters from the edge, and then flipping the part and putting 2 dowel holes right exactly in that same part will help to lock it in position. All right, so here's side 1. Now we're going to go to side 2, and we're going to come here and create our relief again. Now we're going to go back to the layers tab tool here, or the layer settings, and we're going to turn on the meshes for this particular layer. We'll select them both, and again we'll hit apply mesh to relief, add, and apply. So this is going to apply the second layer of meshes and give us our second side relief. So now we have the reliefs, and we have to decide, you know, how we would manage to keep them in place when we're done. On side 1, we need to do something to allow these parts to stay in place so that when we flip them, they're still connected to the material in some way. So side 1 is really where I'm going to create the bridges, and I'm going to have them as part of my output file. Then when I flip them over, because this represents the bottom of the material, I need to have a bridge that comes all the way up to this same spot. Now I might not want to you know, I might change that based upon the type of file being cut here, but just for this example, I felt like this would be a good way to handle it. And of course, I'm not 100% sure about this particular piece, but I believe that this will be held in position adequately as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and create, and actually before I do this, I'm going to come here and I'm going to go to the surface menu and say extract slice. What this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to get a little outline of each of these parts, and that's what I'm going to use to toolpath just in the area I want to toolpath, and not to toolpath a bunch of other areas. So if I turn off my relief, you can see these other 3 reliefs were created. I'm actually going to get rid of the relief itself. I just wanted that 2D geometry, and now we're going to move this into the toolpath layer. When I scroll in, it'll update the view and move those into the other layer. Okay, so I did that. I wanted to create those before I go to this next step of creating the bridges. All right, now I'm not even going to be too exact about this. I mean, you can put as much effort or time as you want into developing this part of the technique, but basically we just want to create some kind of a bridge that's going to keep this part connected to the outer part of the material. All right, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to just move these offset a little bit from the edges here, and this is the part where I'm saying you could be a little bit more exact about this if you want than when I'm just freehanding it here. If you want to calculate exactly where the best potential will be for securing the part, I am going to come here and make sure this is about 25 millimeters wide piece. All right, and I can just click on this middle part here, and I'm not going to go too much past the edge of this parts when I'm cutting them out, so I'm not too worried about that. Let me make sure all my snaps are off here. All right, so I'm just extending a little bit past the edge of each part, and I could use this as a middle piece. Now I'm going to hit my shift and control and drag one over to the other side now that they're the size that I want. All right, now I'm also going to take one of these, and now I'll come to the rotate tool, tell it to make a copy, rotate it 90 degrees right on top of where it is. That was just an easy way for me to make a copy of this and rotate it at the same time. Now this part, I'd rather just have my tool cut as much of the surface as I can. So if I can get away with this, I'm just going to move this part right here. If this will work for this example, and these bridges don't have to be quite this wide. They're not going to be very tall once we cut it from the other side. All right, but I'm going to come in here and actually I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit narrower. And position this one here. Hit my Control and Shift key and position one just on the other side of this part. All right, so here's two bridges here and here's two bridges here. And now I'm going to select these. And first I'll select my relief, and I'll see the height here is 34.7148 millimeters. 34.7148. So I'll come and select these, select my relief. I'm going to go merge highest this time. 34.7148, which I can still see because it's still selected here. Flat, merge highest, got my value here, and we're going to hit apply. So what that's going to do is create these parts here that are the same height as the relief. So when we toolpath it, this particular area is not going to be toolpathed. All right, and I think before I do that, I'm just going to come here. Just extend that just a little bit. All right. And zoom out here again. Since these are the only things on this layer, I can go ahead and drag a box around it. It'll remember the last settings I had here, and I'm going to hit this again, hit apply. And these are what's going to keep these parts from moving. As I flip it over, it's going to leave me an area that can remain bridged to the material. So now let's come to this other side, and this is the side 2. There's side 2. All right, we also need to come here. Let's take a look at it from the side. It's just resting on top of the plate. We need to come here and extract a slice to give us our outline shapes. Here's the relief we want to slice. Create a green check mark here, or check our green check mark, and that's going to create some new reliefs just basically by getting rid of this flat, no thickness background. That's a good way to get a shape to cut if you have added a 3D part like that. Now, if you have the original shapes that came with the design, then that's even better. We're creating an approximation of the shape based upon the relief surface and 1 pixel up from none. If you have the original shapes, then I would import those along with the STL file. If you don't have them, then we can create a close enough approximation. All right, so now we're going to delete the reliefs on those, and we're going to move this into the side 2 toolpath so that when it comes time to toolpath, we can use those 2D contours. All right, so now we have all of our pieces, all of our shapes created. All right, I'm going to go back to layer 1. And we're going to move this into the material, but I want this flat part here to be the very top of the material. So for this side, I'm going to come here, I'm going to say move the relief so that the top is right at 0. And we should be able to hit F2, and we'll hit Control R to redraw this, and confirm that the very top of this relief is at 0, which it is. That's what I want to see. Now we'd have to decide which tool are we going to use. Now most of this could be created with a bigger tool, like say maybe a 10 or 12 millimeter tool, but I do have some concerns about these more detailed areas, and so we could always come back and hit these up with just a smaller tool, or we can use a small tool to do the whole surface. So if we wanted to create an area, a toolpath just in this area, we would need to come and pretty much draw some little shapes here that are, and I would just draw one of these and then multi-copy it. All right, so I'm just going to create this little shape. And if you wanted to, at this point, you could actually make it offset a little bit so that you could control how much the toolpath exceeds the actual shape itself, and make sure you get the whole shape cut properly. All right, so if we wanted to, we could actually create little parts like this and then just hit these areas up with a smaller tool. So that's an option for handling these other areas. And if I hit Control and Shift here, I can probably make this match most of these other shapes as well. If I hit my Shift key as I hit my arrow keys, it helps me to move it in smaller increments. So these shapes could be used then to cover all these smaller areas if you want. That's something you can kind of decide as you work out the details of the job. So what I'm going to do now is for a moment here, I'm gonna take all these internal components. I'm going to move them to the mesh file just to get rid of them for a moment. Now I'm going to come here and I'm going to turn on my side 1 toolpath and my side 1 relief. That way you see these little cutouts that are just the shape of the relief I need. I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to go to my toolpath, and I have to decide which toolpath I want to use. So and do I want to go up and down, back and forth at a cross angle? You know, for this example, I'm just going to go 0 degrees, which is east and west. If I wanted to go 90 degrees, it would go north and south. So here I'm going to come and pick from my list of available tools. I have a 12 millimeter tool, and looks like I have a 3/8 ball nose tool, which would be about 0.375, or I can see that it's going to be bigger than 6 millimeter just because of its position here. So we'll go ahead and select this one as our tool we're going to use. So I'm going to double click this. Now actually, even before I go there, I should probably come here and decide how deep I want to go. Now because this is side 1, you know, I just want to make sure that I get all of the 3D surface I need to get here, and I can drag this tool down here, or drag a little guideline here. If I want to turn this off, I can kind of see the internal components. You know, I just want to make sure I get all these surfaces cut, and I can leave the rest as a way to keep these parts connected to the material. So let's edit this guideline, and this is about 24 or 25. So that would mean I would be cutting about 25 millimeters in there and leaving 10 millimeters of this part connected, which will be removed when we do the other side. All right, so now I'm going to come here. Oh, I want to go back to side 1 toolpath and side 1. These are my only 2 active parts. All right, so I can just select everything here. Hit Control A. There's a lot of redrawing going on here. I went ahead and saved the file here just because it was starting to get a little sluggish. But we do have a lot more going on here in terms of all the reliefs on screen. Okay, now I'm going to come here and again go to the island fill here. I'm going to choose my 3/8 inch end mill. I'm going to go to a depth of 25 millimeters. I'm going to apply an overcut, but not way too much here. So we'll do about a 3 millimeter overcut. We're going to make sure that our feeds and speeds here are not too bad. Let's see, millimeters per minute. That would be changed to whatever you want them to be. But we do want to check our percentage here. Now, you know, again, if we want it to be east and west, we're going to leave that at 0. If we want it to be north and south, we would change it to 90. and let's do an 87% overlap here. Okay, so when we hit OK, it's going to create our toolpath using that little bit bigger tool. All right, there's our toolpaths. We can see that the toolpath is only going so deep here, so it's not cutting down any farther into the side of the part. All right, and this would represent our side number 1 cut, and this would be how we would cut out just these areas here. And we are spending a little time cutting flat spots, so you know, we could spend some time creating toolpath masks that avoided cutting these flat spot areas if we wanted to. I'm not going to do that for this example, but if you wanted to, you can basically draw a blue and a red line and then select that along with your relief, and then toolpath just in that area. So I created just an outline shape here, but we could also create some red lines that run around the inside to avoid cutting certain areas. Now, one thing we will show here is, let's come here and turn on layer 2 for just a second. I think somewhere in here I grabbed a couple shapes, so I'm going to say Control X. Turn everything on and then off. And I'm going to say paste these to the active layer. So now I've just put those 2 little shapes in here. I would turn on my relief. Select these little 2 parts along with the relief. So whatever you have selected along with the relief, make sure that I'm getting all that there. And for a second here, I'm going to come and just turn off my toolpath. Just be one less thing to have to redraw and make sure I have everything selected here. So now I'm going to come with just these 2 little parts selected, and I can do something with a much smaller tool. Let's say a 3mm tool. And we can see if we turn this back on and then say we just want to look at the smaller tool, we can see that we've toolpathed just that tiny little area with a more detailed toolpath and used a much bigger tool to get to the other area. So that's a way you can handle using a bigger tool for the majority of the surface and a smaller tool for these little detailed areas. And we can reduce the amount of overlap there and spend less time cutting this, just showing you the general idea. All right, so there we have side 1 toolpath and cut. Now let's come here to side 2, and we're going to turn on side 2 toolpath as the main part here. That way the new things will be created, or anything that's created will be created in the new layer. Now I'm going to select both of these again, so I'm going to toolpath just inside these areas. And on this side, I'm actually going to, one thing I want to do just to kind of get a representation of what I'm going to have here, I have to decide how I'm going to cut these out. You know, there's one of 2 things I could do. I could actually come in here and grab these contours. I'm going to do a Control C. Here's side 2. I'm going to paste these to the active layer. Come here and mirror them. I'm going to turn on my midpoint snap and click on the mirrored side. That way I mirrored them along the x-axis, and they are now on the other side here. You know, if I wanted to use my relief to keep these in place, and I can do this either way, it won't affect anything. I can come here now and say, all right, how thick do I want my bridge to be to keep this to the material? Let's say we're going to do a 5mm bridge. Merge highest, apply. So now I have these little bridges here that would leave these parts connected to the material I'm cutting. So if I use my 3D toolpath and use my 3D toolpath to cut these out, it's not going to toolpath these areas. It's going to leave them there. So these would be how I would leave it connected to the material. But what I might just do is I might just use a 2D toolpath to cut these out and use 2D bridges. Instead of using these at all, I might just cut this out in a series of like a 2D toolpath, and then just put a bridge here and here, here and here to line up with where the bridge is on the other side, where the material actually is, and that way I could bridge it with a 2D toolpath. So everything is different based upon the particular components of it, and in working with this a little bit, you might come up with the way that's a better one way than the other. So if I'm going to use a 2D toolpath to cut it out, then I don't need to worry about cutting my 3D toolpath all the way to the bottom. Just need to get it to where it's going to cover the surface. If I am going to cut it out with the 3D toolpath, then the 3D toolpath needs to go all the way to the bottom. So first of all, let's come in here, and when we flip the part, what was the bottom of the material will be resting all the way on the bottom of the plate. So on this time, I'm going to come here and move this side too. I'm going to tell it go all the way to the bottom of the plate, not to the top, but to the bottom. So we're going to rough away anything that was extra. There's a very small extra amount of millimeters of material. It will be roughed away on this side. All right, now I'm going to select these components. Oops, need to come back here now and turn on this. Again, I usually kind of make it easy on myself and put this one, now that I don't need them anymore, I'll put them on this mesh 2 layer. Okay, now I'm going to select all these parts, and before I toolpath this, maybe I'll come in here, and again I want to make sure that this line is going to gets to the bottom of all and reaches all my surfaces. Any surface that needs to be created, I want to create it with this 3D toolpath. So if I go down to this point and I see this is 5mm, if I go down all the way to 30, even past 30, I'm going to definitely be able to create the whole surface here. So I'll use 30mm this time, leaving about 5mm of, or even a little less than that. And I could go down 29 if I wanted. I mean, I don't think it would make that big of a difference. All right, so let's go here now to the hatch fill. I'll just leave it in the same direction, although we are going to use the ball nose tool here, a little bigger one. Alright, now I've got my original toolpath back here. I do need to change my depth to 30. And of course I'd also have to consider here whether I'm going to add another tool, because I see a fair amount of extra toolpath here. So on this side I think I do need it, and I probably would do this on the other side as well. So let's come in here and actually choose this 3/8 end mill twice. All right, and the first tool is going to go down to about, let's say, 25. The second tool will go down to 30. This first tool is going to be a step rough. It's going to offset from the surface, let's say 5mm. We're cutting per pass. We want to see how many passes here. So let's take a 1/2 inch, just for an example here, we'll take off this 8 millimeters per pass. And this is a 2D step rough, so it's not going to follow the whole surface. All right, and everything looks good there. Now for our detailed pass, this one is the one that needs to go at a higher overlap. We want to do this one in just one pass. That's the wrong tool. I don't know how we got that one. All right, so there's one pass, 87%. Put our feed rates in here. And let's make sure we're not doing too high of a percentage here. Here we can do a lot less because it's just a rough pass. All right, now we've got both a rough and a clean in there. How much are we going to exceed past the boundary? It's not too much, so that we shouldn't go any deeper than we're saying we're going to here anyways, but I don't want to spend time cutting around the outside of the part if we're going to come back and cut it out with a 2D shape anyways. But if there is a little roundness up here at the top, I do want to get that. So I put my overcut a little bit less than half the diameter of the bit. Right, and I'm actually, normally I would pause this, but I'm not pausing it because if you find you're having a delayed result, then sometimes you guys have a problem with that, then I would like to know about it. All right, now it seems like everything went okay here, but I do not see much of a rough pass here. So I'm going to try this one more time. Occasionally, well, I do see some 2D roughing in there maybe. So let's see here. Let's hit F10. All right, we're going to look at just the first cut depth. All right, we should see some toolpath here, and I don't see anything. So looks like we do have a little bit of an issue here. We're going to delete this toolpath. And sometimes the step rough can be a little bit touchy when it comes to this overcut. So we're going to just bump this up to 4 just to see if that will help. Should expect to see some kind of toolpath in the middle here. If that doesn't work, which it doesn't look like it has here, just in the interest of speeding this up, I'm going to add another kind of a rough cut here. And I'm going to send this about halfway down there. So since we're using a bigger tool, I'm not sure what the material is, but very likely it'll be not a super hard material. So rather than to do a step rough here, and I think I'd have to keep playing with the overcut to get that to work, maybe making it less or more, or making it a separate island fill toolpath, which I could do. I'm just going to make this I'm still going to offset this halfway from, or 5 millimeters from the surface. Let's go down a maximum of 13 millimeters on this one, and we're going to do this in one pass. And then we will leave a little bit of material for the second pass. I did pause it there for a second because it's getting kind of long here. Now, one thing I wanted to do, so I went ahead and delete this, and I'm coming back here. One thing I want to do is reduce this overlap amount again. I don't want to go too far past the edge of the part there. So I'm going to cut this back to 3 millimeters again. And this way it'll just do the round over at the top part, but it won't exceed the boundary of the shape enough to cut much on the outside of the part. And I'm going to pause this again for recording purpose to try and shorten the movie now a little. All right, now we've completed our toolpath, and we have here the rough pass, which is offset from the surface a little bit and does help to remove the top layer of the material halfway through, then the final surface going all the way down. So this would help to give us both the rough and the clean pass. Now finally, I'm going to go ahead and I can treat these out now as 2D toolpaths or as a 3D toolpath, but because I have these 2D shapes here, I'm just going to use these as the shape I'm going to cut out. I'll hit my control key because I don't want that outer part. I just want these 3 shapes. All right, now I'm going to come in here, go to routing offset, and here I'd pick some particular tool. Again, I'm using about somewhere between around a 9 millimeter tool here. My cutout depth is going to be 35, maybe even 36 millimeters. I am going to do bridges here. I'm going to do 4 bridges per shape. I have to decide how long I want them to be. These are about 25 millimeters wide, so I can go up to 25 millimeters with my bridge width. So maybe we'll just say 20 here. How high do I want it to be is just how much material do I want it to be connected to the material. So let's say maybe 2 millimeters. All right, then you'd have your basic other parameters here. I'm not sure how much we can clear in one pass with this tool, so we'll have it cut about a ½ inch at a time. This is in inches per minute here. I thought that was millimeters earlier, so I might have all these other feed rates way too high. But if that was going to be inches a minute, yeah, I probably would leave it somewhere around here, depending upon the material. And I got my bridges there. I don't want to apply that to the relief. There's no relief selected, so that's not really an option. I probably would do a little entry exit here. And I do have one on there because I use an existing toolpath. And so since these are just 2D toolpaths, and now these are just going to be treated like 2D shapes, and this is going to be what cuts out the part. We just have to make sure that the bridges line up right where these bridges are. So I'm going to hit F12 here. Now in this case it might be helpful to see those bridges. So let's turn on side 2 mesh for a second. And let's go to, actually there's too much going on here, so I'm just going to grab these objects we used to help create the mesh. Control X, and I'll turn off all layers. Paste this back to the active layer. Now this shows me where my bridges should be. So we have these objects selected, or at least one of them selected. We're going to go back up here to the toolpath menu and say edit bridges. Now we're going to make these bridges line up with where they actually are on the part. Not sure where the entry exit there is. One more bridge. Let's turn off our snaps because it's going to try and snap to some things there. Here's our lower one. All right, bridge is aligned. Use our arrow key here to help move around in this view. And we should have one more here and one more here. So this way we help the bridges to line up with where we left the other parts. Now let's come and take a look at this other shape. And we'll just move our start point away for a second. Here's one bridge. Here's a bridge. There's a bridge, and we're missing one more. So we'll just move that one right here. Okay, so I want to see those little blue arrows on each side of there. Maybe hit F12. And let's make sure everything's lined up here. And the top view is really the best way here to make sure that these are all good. Alright, so the bridges are lined up now, and we would be able to cut side one of this part, flip the part over, and making sure to register it by either cutting the shape out itself, you know, and that might mean as much as coming here to side one and cutting this out of some other bigger piece of material, or pre-cutting the part to a particular size. You know, I would say that you just want to make sure it's easy to flip, and even you could have any size part here. That's where those two little registration holes come in handy. If you put a hole, a 10 millimeter hole, just you know, using a 1-inch boundary box here, and you were put a hole maybe 5 millimeters away from the middle on this side and 5 millimeters away from the middle on this side, then it doesn't really matter if you square the outside of your part. You can just use these holes to register the flipping of the part. If you don't want to use holes, then you need to make sure the part is very square, so that when you flip it, side A and side B match up and align with each other. Alright, so this has been an example here. Now, one thing I'm going to do before I send you this file is I'm going to go back in there and make sure that my toolpaths all have reasonable feed rates. But this would be how I would go about doing this example, and then we'll do the simulation of side 2 here as the last step. Alright, and we're going to make sure that we're doing our hatch fill first and our island fill second. So first tool lift, we'll just be doing that rough pass, and that rough pass. Then the second more detailed cut is going to do the whole surface. And the last thing is going to cut the parts out. Oh, well, first we got to cut that shape out, then cut each of these other shapes out, and we should be able to notice some bridges in there somewhere. Kind of hard to see. Well, it's just only 2 millimeters there, so probably I could change that to a 5 millimeter bridge, and it might be a little bit easier to see there. So I'm going to select all these, go to my toolpath, edit bridges, edit bridge. Let's make the height 5 millimeters and apply to all the bridges in the selection. So I should have there, if I did this correctly, just increase the height of these bridges. And you might have to play around with the direction to get the best, smoothest result. I'm not sure if the sand, what the sanding process is when they're done. You really still can't see those bridges. Just because of the shading there, I think, but we can see them there in the 2D toolpath, so we're certain that we're not cutting these parts out there right at that part of the location. So this has been a movie of how to do these two-sided parts for this particular STL file.